Resuming debate. The Honourable Member for Parkdale-High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very pleased to speak once again on this Budget Implementation Bill C-43 on behalf of my city, Toronto, and on behalf of my community, the riding of Parkdale-High Park. And as we meet here in Ottawa, the city that I come from has been for some time under considerable pressure. It's a wonderful city. It's the biggest city in the country. It's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. It's got so many strengths that it's just a wonderful place to live. But I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that there are so many challenges that I see in our city that require action from the federal government. Everything from the crushing lack of affordable housing that we face to the gridlock that we see in our city streets because of the lack of federal dollars coming in to boost our transit infrastructure. I was born and raised in the city of Toronto, and at one point I remember us having one of the best transportation systems in North America, if not the world. We had a great subway system, streetcars, buses, and while the population has grown by leaps and bounds and the city is a much more sprawling city geographically, our transportation system has not grown equally. And so it doesn't matter whether you live in a suburb of the city where you can't get from one northern part of the city to the other northern part without hours and hours of waiting and sitting on buses because the subway system has not kept pace, or whether you live in the center of the city where I live, where often you see subway or streetcar after streetcar go by because they're jam-packed because our population has grown so much in the city and our transit hasn't kept pace. So transit's a huge issue. I have to say housing, Mr. Speaker, is a massive issue. I meet with people who live in public housing, in Toronto housing, and frankly it would break your heart to see the conditions some people live in. Seniors who worked all their lives, who are living in apartments where the oven doesn't work, where the elevator is often out of service, where there's mold on the walls. We see overcrowded apartments. I've seen families of 5 and 6 living in a bachelor apartment. Or you see people living in rental housing, which is overpriced and often not well cared for. And we've seen loopholes in the rent control system exploited so that rents get jacked up and people get excluded from affordable accommodation. So we have a crushing need for affordable rental housing, but we also have so many families in the city of Toronto, which isn't quite as expensive as Vancouver, but boy, is it expensive when the average kind of 3-bedroom home in the city core seems to be going for almost $1 million. And you see young families that have these massive, massive mortgages, and at the same time, if they've got a couple of kids, they're paying tens of thousands of dollars in childcare fees. That's if they can find quality childcare. We also see young people graduating from university with many thousands of dollars, again, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. And often they face a very bleak job market. I'm going to talk about that more in just a minute. But there are many crushing problems, and not to mention what I think is globally the most serious challenge, which is climate change. And the pressing need for this country, which is once again just being called out by Ban Ki-moon of the UN for shirking our responsibilities to address the pressing need of climate change, which surely, to goodness, we're all in this together. It's one Earth, it's one blue dot from space. And surely this is something that the countries of the world, the leaders of the world, can all agree is a pressing need and that we need to deal with. And yet our government seems to be on a one-track path, which is oil and gas, and we have these wonderful natural resources, but to the detriment of our investment in clean energy, in energy efficiency, and in advanced manufacturing and advanced economic measures, innovative measures to get our economy really moving into the 21st century. So I raise these, and there are many other issues, challenging issues that we face in our city and in our country. But let me say, this Budget Implementation Act, frankly, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't address any of these issues. It doesn't deal with the concerns that I hear every day. Rail safety, we were debating during question period, the pressing need for better rail safety. We have hundreds and hundreds of tank cars, of hazardous goods, of who knows what, rolling through our neighborhood. And the citizens in my community not only don't have the right to know what's in those tank cars, they have no right to know whether they're protected, whether there's effective emergency measures. They have no right to know that their safety is being adequately handled by the experts, by the regulators in this government that are supposed to be doing that job. And we saw in Lac-Mégantic they were not doing that job, and many people died. Mr. Speaker, in this bill today, it's yet another one of these omnibus budget bills where Conservatives love to cram in all sorts of measures in a very, very undemocratic, unaccountable method, lacking in transparency. And again, we have many measures in this bill that were not introduced in the budget and that they don't want Canadians to even know about, and they're counting on people not paying attention. This bill is 460 pages, 400 clauses, but what it does do, and a couple of things I do want to highlight. First of all, it is an outright attack on some of those vulnerable people in our society, refugee claimants, and an implementation of a job credit as well that has been panned by experts that dips into the EI fund when in fact they should be using EI to give unemployed workers adequate benefits so that they can keep their heads above water with the catastrophe of losing a job. There's nothing in this bill that helps the more than 300,000 unemployed Canadians or help replace the more than 400,000 good manufacturing jobs that have been lost. And just today, Mr. Speaker, new job numbers have come out. And just last month, in November, Canada lost another 10,700 jobs. And most shockingly, 46,000 jobs were lost in the private sector. So much for being good economic managers. Our economy is not recovering. Youth unemployment is now back up to 13%. We have over 1.2 million unemployed Canadians. And what does that mean? That means poverty is increasing. 25 years ago, we voted to eliminate child poverty. Well, guess what? 1 in 5 children is living in poverty in Canada today. The numbers are up from 25 years ago. 4 in 10 Indigenous kids are living in poverty. That's not only a tragedy for them, that is a scar on Canadian society and the Canadian economy that we will have to deal with for the future. Inequality is rising. The top 10% of Canadians have seen their net worth grow since 2005 by 42%, while those in the bottom 10% saw their net worth shrink by 150%. That's growing inequality, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about joblessness, we're talking about poverty, and this government is turning their backs, rewarding their friends, focusing only on the oil and gas sector, and to heck with the rest of the economy. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, we're committed to a national child care program. We want to make sure that parents have a real choice of having quality, affordable, accessible childcare. We want to make sure that we're defending our health care system, that we're investing in Medicare. It's a program created by the NDP, defended by the NDP. We're going to continue to defend health care. We want to invest in transit, and we want to get the job done both on the economy and on the environment, Mr. Speaker. That's what New Democrats will do in 2015. We wish we could work with the government to get the job done now. Join with us. We can make a difference for Canada now. We don't have to wait. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question and comments. The honourable member from Vancouver North, Winnipeg North, excuse me.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to pick up on the member's comments in regards to the thousands of jobs that have been lost. And it is important to recognize that this month we have had a net loss of in excess of 10,000 jobs. We should be concerned about that. She made reference to the government's business tax break on the EI. The Liberal Party has put forward a proposal that would in fact see, in essence, employers being given a break as an encouragement to hire through EI reductions for the next following 2 years. Outside stakeholders have applauded the Liberal proposal. I know that in the 2011 NDP platform, it stated that the employers will receive a 1-year rebate on employer contributions for the Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance premiums for each new employee hired. That's very close to exactly what it is that the Liberal Party has put forward. My question to the member is, does she believe and support Jack Layton's plan in 2011, which has in essence been taken, at least in good part, and expanded upon in terms of the Liberal Party's proposal?
The honourable member from Parkdale-High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Winnipeg for his question. And I think it's flattering that the Liberal Party has been attracted to the measures of the NDP is proposing. And yes, we did put forward a proposal to give a tax credit to small businesses to hire new people, especially youth. And we think that is a positive measure. We would encourage the government to pick up on that. But where we would disagree with our Liberal colleagues is we don't want to tap into the EI fund to pay employers to hire people, and that's the difference. I mean, I think they're maybe trying to get to the same place, but we don't agree with how they're doing it. The EI fund is paid for by employers and workers, and frankly, in the city of Toronto right now, only about 20% of unemployed workers are actually getting EI benefits. So what we want is those monies in the EI fund used to give unemployed workers the benefits that they have paid for, the benefits they're entitled to, help them transition to a new job, rather than giving the money back to employers. We don't think that's a useful thing.
Questions et commentaires?
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I must say you look very fine in the chair. You make a very good speaker. It's very nice to see you there. And I've listened very carefully to my colleague from Parkdale-High Park, and she describes so similarly what I also face in Vancouver in terms of high housing costs, transit issues, climate change, a dense urban environment where people are really struggling to make ends meet. And one of the things that is so disappointing is that there hasn't been a commitment by the federal government to a national housing plan. We've seen these sort of sporadic programs that come and go, and really when you look at the scope of the issue of what's needed for affordable housing in this country, it's huge. And it's actually a very solid investment in terms of jobs, in terms of for example, energy retrofit for homes. And so I wonder if I could ask the member if this is really a critical need in her city as well in terms of the need for affordable housing.
The honourable member from Parkdale-High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I thank my colleague from Vancouver East for that question. It's a pressing need. You know, what we could do if we wanted to create jobs in this country, why not go to work and do an energy retrofit for all of the high-rises in cities across this country. In Toronto, we have more high-rise apartments than any other city in the country. A lot of them are built in the 60s, 70s. They're not very energy efficient. Imagine the jobs that could be created. And Jack Layton had a system whereby you can invest in this energy efficiency and pay for it over time with the money that you save by reduced energy costs. I just want to say one other thing about the pressing need for housing, because it really does take the federal government's involvement. We had a horrible tragedy in our city very recently, within the last week, where a young mother and her kids were killed, and subsequently her husband, he has died. And it seems as though she went from a shelter where she was trying to escape violence, went to a private apartment, couldn't afford it, there was no transition housing. She had to go back to that dangerous situation. And now she and her kids are dead. If that isn't a crying argument for housing, I don't know what is. Thank you.